Oh boy, the Tailwind team just released the very first alpha version of version 4 of Tailwind CSS. For me, it was yesterday evening when I came across this tweet by Adam where he showed it to the world. I really had to resist to run back into the studio and play with it and record this video, so here I am the morning after, and I really want to take you through what I saw yesterday evening and why I am so excited. So first, let's take a brief look at the blog post the team shared, and then we will dive into some code as well. So the first thing in the article is they're actually already working on this for quite a while, and there is also quite a bit of under the hood improvements there. The first thing is that, of course, everything is about speed nowadays, so they did make some speed improvements. And I'm really not doing this enough justice, but we have so much to cover, and the thing here is everything became smaller, faster, simpler, and that's always a good thing, right? And also, if we go a little bit further, you also see that they removed a lot of additional tools that you need. From now on, you simply need Tailwind, and maybe you add a Vite plugin or a PostCSS plugin. That's pretty much it. You don't need to install things like PostCSS, Auto Prefixer, and things like that anymore. And that just makes it so much easier for people new to it to start using this. But then if we keep on scrolling, we're coming really to the juicy parts. Because what you see here are 4 bullet points that all have to do with modern CSS. And that again proves that Tailwind is just CSS, and now they're even using many of these modern tools. So the first one is that they're using native cascade layers. With these cascade layers, there is a lot less battling with CSS specificity, and the fact that they added that in now just again makes Tailwind a lot easier to use. Also, they're using things like add property. With add property, you're able to kind of specify a type of your custom CSS variable, and because they are now doing that by default for their custom values, like for example the gradient variables, that means that all of a sudden you're able to animate these variables because CSS knows it's a color, and because it knows that, it's able to add a transition to it, and that is actually really cool. Again, this is just plain CSS magic, but the fact that they include it now out of the box, that means a lot. Then also they're using color mix, which is also a modern approach for CSS to kind of mix colors. So what you can do with that is you can take a color, you can add some opacity to it, and color mix will simply create a new color that is based on that opacity. And finally, the 4th bullet has all to do with container queries. These are also now included out of the box, don't require a custom plugin anymore, and I mean, container queries are just so nice to use. So that's a really nice thing to get as well. Finally, they're talking about composable variants. And if we look at this example where you see group has, and then you needed to use an ampersand before, now you can simply do group has focus. That, of course, again, makes it so much simpler and easier to use. But if we keep on scrolling down a little bit and you see things like group not has peer not data active, well, they of course also say it's a horrible reason, but yeah, then things might be going a little bit too far. But for specific things like group has focus, that's just so much easier to use and really nice. But then if we just keep on scrolling and skip over some parts for now, then we start to come at the really exciting part, and that is they call it CSS first configuration, but what you just see here is Tailwind has become even more just CSS. And the main thing is, if you want to use Tailwind now, you simply need to import the Tailwind CSS package after installing it, but you just import it in your CSS, and from that point on, everything all of a sudden becomes CSS variables. I mean, there is no Tailwind config file needed anymore, and that is so cool, because we have CSS variables now. Why wouldn't we use them? And you could use CSS variables before in Tailwind, but you're kind of declaring them twice. You're also setting the CSS variable value inside your team as well, so that was quite a bit of a hassle. But now that's not needed anymore. You can just use them as CSS variables. And that was exactly the part that made me so excited about this. So let's quickly take a brief look at a small project that I've set up where we can use this today. And remember, everything is still alpha version. You should definitely not use this in production, but it's so cool to play around with and see what the future of Tailwind will be. If you want to know how to use this alpha version, at the bottom of the blog article, which I've also linked in the description, there is some installation instructions on how you can use them. But if we quickly jump into the small project that I set up, then what you see here is a basic Vite project that I've just installed. And what I've also did inside of the Vite configuration is that I've added the Tailwind CSS plugin. And adding that is the only thing you need to do now. And then you simply import Tailwind CSS, and that is it. From that point on, you can use all of Tailwind's defaults. Because if we then go into our app.tsx, you see that there are some regular Tailwind classes that you're probably used to. You see we have things like text tree XL, font medium, padding, everything is simply there, and even the auto-completion still works. For the autocomplete to work, by the way, you need to upgrade your VS Code extension to the pre-release version, but as soon as you do that, everything starts to work again. And now let's take a look at how we can use these CSS variables to start customizing our team. Well, we go into our CSS file, and what you need to add for that is the add team directive. Inside the add team directive, you're able to specify everything you want. So you can, for example, say color foo is And let's see, okay, it's gonna be red according to Copilot. And then if you do that, you go back into your app and you can simply, instead of background gray 300, you can use background foo. And all of a sudden everything is red. And you even see the auto completion works, and also my color highlighter picks it up as well. But just like with the, I think, old Tailwind CSS, what happens is that there's variables for all of these different colors. So if you would inspect the page right now, you'll see that there's all of these different colors generated. However, the theme now is also very extensible. And if you watch my last video about Tailwind's theme configuration, you know that I think to get any consistency in your design, you probably don't want to have 25 grades if your design doesn't use them all. So what you're able to do now is you can go in and say color-star is initial. And with that, if you do that as the very first color you define, you simply override all of the other colors, or actually remove them from your theme entirely. And what you see now is that all of these colors are suddenly gone from the Tailwind definition. And it also means if we go back into our app, the background foo still works, but background grade 300 wouldn't work and is also not auto-completed anymore, simply because it doesn't exist. And the same thing you're, for example, able to do for your font size. By default, if you go into the app.tsx, you see that we have a 3XL, but if we remove that, you see that we also have 2XL, 4, 5, 6, 7, we got all of them. But let's say that your text has only 3 sizes. You could, for example, say font size initial, and then we're going to say font size small is 12 pixels, font size medium 16 pixels, and font size large is 20 pixels. I don't know, maybe that's the only thing we use. And then we go back into our app and we can simply say text. And now you see down here, we have large, medium, and also small. And then again, this is just auto-completed again. Everything works like you expected. And to me, this feels so much more natural to work with. You have all these CSS variables that you can use, which is just regular CSS again. And once more, the fact that you can use this initial is so much nicer. You can simply remove all the things you don't need or want and create a very small theme, but still use all the powers that Tailwind brings, including things like the auto-completion and all of the other utility classes. And if you take a look at the default theme that V4 of Tailwind now brings, you see all of the other variables that you have and that you can override. So for example, breakpoint, you can also override or reset by doing breakpoint-star initial, if that's what you want, and then all of the other classes will simply work as well. Although I did notice that the auto-completion for breakpoint doesn't perfectly work yet then. It still gives you the old values, so I guess that's still something they're working on. But for colors, as well as things like shadows, radiuses, everything is then simply configurable. And honestly, I think with these new variables, Tailwind became so much more approachable. There is a really nice set of CSS variables that's already there, and from that point on, you can configure some, remove some if you want to, and then all of the other utility classes are simply automatically there for you. You don't need to write them at all. And I mean, I don't want to create the same utility class over and over. I have done that for over a decade already. So I'm happy that there's a tool that does that for me. But yeah, this only scratched the surface of what Tailwind V4 does. And I think if you keep on exploring more, you discover even more really amazing things. Oh yeah, talking about amazing things, one thing I already discovered yesterday evening on Twitter was a tweet by Simon Swiss. And he created this very basic repo where he already experimented with Tailwind V4 as well. And what you see here is he imported the OpenProps package, which is a really nice package by Adam Argyle, and that contains a lot of CSS variables. And this package could very well be something that is part of your own design system. But what you then do is, because this specifies all of these CSS variables, you can simply configure Tailwind CSS variables. They don't even need to be medium and large. You can create whatever name you want, and Tailwind will generate the utility classes for you. You can then simply set that variable from the package as a value in Tailwind's theme, and all of a sudden you've created your own custom theme. And that is of course very powerful, because right now you can simply define these variables, and that's the only thing you need to do, and everything starts to work automatically from that point on. So I don't know about you, but I am super excited about this new future and new direction that Tailwind is heading into, even though we only scratched the surface. But if you enjoyed this very brief walkthrough, then absolutely leave a like and subscribe to this channel. It is the only thing that I ask from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.